in a Hundo. Today's guest is Dr. Jai Eswara. This is our first episode done via FaceTime. Due to the coronavirus, we couldn't meet in person. Jai is one of my oldest friends. We've been friends since first grade, or Jai Bahr as I like to call him. He's a doctor at St. Elizabeth's Medical Center in Boston. He's Johns Hopkins educated, he's Harvard educated, and he tested positive for COVID-19 last month. He's going to talk to us about that. We also went on a trip to Japan last year. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Zima and how this sparkling adult beverage was relegated to Japan. You can't find it anywhere else in the world. And we're going to talk about food in Japan. You know, sushi, ramen, wagyu beef, and of course pizza. Stay tuned, you'll learn about Japanese pizza. And we'll talk about The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan doc that's got everybody fired up. Before we get into things with Jai Bahr, I just wanted to give a shout out to a couple people over in Japan, since this is the Japanese episode. My boy G-Baby from University of Miami. He's playing ball over there professionally. He's been over there for years. Tried to link up with him when we were there, but he was out of town. He had a road trip with his team. And my boy Damon Berman is over there with the Navy. He got there a few months after I was there, so I didn't get to see him while I was there. But I know he's going to listen to this, so make a list of these spots we hit over in Tokyo, and make sure you check them out if you haven't been there yet, DB. All right, let's get to the show. Jai Bahr Eswara is not just a pretty face. He's the Chief of Urology at St. Elizabeth's Hospital. Some may call him King Ding-a-ling. And he's one of the funniest dudes I ever met. I don't believe I ever told him this, but I feel like he could have been a stand-up comedian or a comedy writer. I know that's not easy, but I think he could pull it off. Shout out to a friend of ours, Matt Hubbard, who is also a comedy writer. He was in one of our classes we discussed later on in the program. Still trying to... Mrs. D comes up to me. She says, "We got a new kid coming to class tomorrow. He's a little late. He's out of the country. He's coming over from India." And I was like, "Okay." And I was like, what do you need from me?" And she's like, "I need you to be nice to him. I'm going to have him sit next to you. And if you're nice to him, everyone will be nice to him." So I was like, "All right, that works. That's fine." So the next day, Jai Bahr shows up in class. He's sitting next to me. And I lean over and I'm like, "Hey, what's up, man?" He's like, "Hey, what's up?" And I'm like, "Where you from, man? You from India?" So he's like, "Nah, I just got back from India. I was on a trip with my family. I'm from Milwaukee, man." And I was like, "Milwaukee?" So kind of caught me off guard a little bit. I thought he was from India. So,
the irony behind that is I was spent kindergarten and really like my whole life in the United States. But I was at Hannah for kindergarten. I was there with Ms. Ward. But Ms. D, she always had something against me.
she was making it tough for the brown kid.
Yeah.
Yep.
She knew lots of trouble.
But yeah, so I'm laying a little history groundwork for us before we get going on this thing. Me and Jai Bahr go way back. He's my oldest friend, really. I don't hang out with anybody that I met before first grade, and me and Jai Bahr have been kicking it since first grade. We were in this gifted class together. We used to go once a week. You'd go to a different school, and like a bunch of different schools in the town we lived in would all travel to this one school, and we would like. It's kind of like a bunch of nerds in a classroom, and me and Jai Bahr were like the cool kids in there, and we would try to. Oh, we thought we were. And it was fun though. We spent a lot of time together growing up. he knows me as well as anybody. So looking forward to this conversation. Definitely not strangers. I've had some guests on this show that I barely knew. This is not one of them. So we had all that EEC and first grade and all this history together. We got sports together. I got a great story about JV football. So we're playing Peabody High. Peabody was like the favorite that year. They ended up winning the Super Bowl. They ended up going undefeated. But we played them in a preseason game. We were sophomores, Jay?
Yeah, we were sophomores or juniors. I can't remember, but yeah.
Okay, so we're on the scrub unit, the JV unit. So this is a varsity scrimmage against Peabody. It's like the last scrimmage of the season before you get into your league schedule or your real games. But it's played with the whole deal, the refs and the clock and everything. So
it was a big deal.
Yeah, it was kind of a big deal. So second half, maybe third or fourth quarter, or late third quarter, early fourth quarter, they throw in the backups, which is myself. I was the backup quarterback. Jai Bahr was a backup tight end. And we go in there and we drive down the field. It was a tie game, or were we down? I don't even remember.
I want to say it was tied, right?
Okay, so we're tied. Long story short, I throw it to the back of the end zone. Jai Bahr's cutting across the back. It could have been either him or J.J. Gary, and Jai Bahr came down and it stuck to his hands like Velcro.
Yeah, I couldn't let JJ have that one. I had to take that.
Yeah. So, the fact that JJ was out there tells me we were sophomores, because he wouldn't have been out there if he was a senior.
Yeah, we were sophomores. You're right. The other funny part of that was the defensive back was Steve Lamazny, I think, at that time, right?
Yeah. So he ended up, he was the quarterback that led them to the Super Bowl that year.
I knew him from baseline basketball, so it was always fun playing ball with Steve. He's an incredible athlete, and it was nice to stick one in his eye. So
yeah, he ended up getting drafted by the Red Sox and all that stuff.
Yeah. And
then from there, we went our separate ways for college. Jay went to Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. And then after Johns Hopkins, he ended up at Harvard Med School. And for us to go visit Jai Bahr at Harvard Med School, it was unbelievable for, us idiots from Beverly to go out to Harvard and see this kid. I remember me, Fulsey, and Hendu?
Yeah, did Jimbo go too?
Oh, yeah, it might have been Jimbo, yeah. Yeah, we just, it was great. We had a great time over there. I couldn't believe we were there.
That was a really special time for me. It was really fun catching up with you guys. I hadn't seen you guys in a long time, so it was nice to finally see you.
Exactly. It's not the same as when we're living down the street from each other, because we lived, half a mile from each other growing up.
Yeah, that's right.
And so at this point, I was in Miami and he was in med school. There wasn't much time for us to be hanging out. So, and this is before cell phones and stuff. So
that's right.
It might have been the advent of cell phones, flip phones.
Can I tell a story? Something that just reminded me. You can decide to cut this out if you want.
Go ahead.
All right. Just bringing it back to J.J. Gary, whom I love. And I love J.J. But I think I was a sophomore, maybe he was a junior, and we were in the cage together lifting weights after practice or whatever. And I can't remember if it was, I want to say it was Ben Badger, but probably not. He was probably gone by that point. Somebody made me and JJ have an ab off. We had to lift our shirts up and see who had the nicest set of abs. I think it's obvious that I won that, but if JJ's listening to this, I'd throw that challenge out to JJ for a rematch if he can handle it.
He was working with like a 6 or an 8 pack. What were you working with?
I had like a 17 pack. I had it going on.
I think those were ribs.
Yeah.
Then from there, our paths crossed once again when I was a patient at Mass General Hospital. I was getting a heart surgery. It was very sudden, very scary time in my life. And Jay you were a resident at the time, right?
Yeah, I was either a resident or it was toward the end of medical school. But yeah, you were brought in for this procedure, and luckily everything went okay.
But the best part of it for me relating to Jai Bahr was that I was scared. I was really scared. I had no idea I had any health issues or whatever. I was 26 years old at the time. And to have somebody that I trusted, he wasn't my doctor. I was in the cardiac unit. He was in a different part of the hospital. But he was coming up every day to check on me, every day. And having him there to check on me meant the world to me. It felt like I was like safe. That is just another testament to our friendship, what transpired in that terrible time for me.
It was a scary time for all of us. Obviously, seeing any young person, seeing somebody's basically family come in like that, it was difficult. But you had a really good team taking care of you, and I was lucky that I could kind of keep tabs on you and make sure you were doing okay and try to keep your spirits up. It's hard to go through something like that, especially as a young person.
Yeah, they did a great job. They did an absolutely great job.
And it's a real testament to you. You did everything the right way, and you did everything that they asked of you, and you came out perfectly. I'm really, really impressed.
I did everything they told me to do that could trigger it. I haven't really consumed caffeine or anything, any ephedrine or anything that would speed up my heart rate since then, that would kick it out of, from being normal back to abnormal.
Yeah.
So it's, just a little bit of discipline. So there's a few things I wanted to touch upon with you, Jai Bahr, tonight. Number one, it's good to see you because we're on lockdown, and it's good to have these type of conversations.
Good to see you too, Matty B. It's always a pleasure.
Yes, sir. Okay, so let's start with this whole coronavirus COVID stuff. Jay's a doctor, a medical doctor, Dr. Jai Eswara, and he was having some difficulties a few weeks ago, and he tested positive for coronavirus. So if you could talk a little bit about that, Jay, give people an idea of what happened.
So, I've been feeling well. I've been seeing patients in the office and operating. Everything was going well. I had a cough for a few days, but it was really mild, and I didn't really think much of it. I thought it was maybe asthma or something like that. I checked my temperature at that time. It was 98.0, so I thought I was good. But then on the third day, I started to get these chills, like my teeth kept chattering. I got home from, operating all day. I got under the blankets, and I was still, having chills, so I just kept piling on the blankets. Following morning, I was drenched in sweat, so I checked my temperature, and it was 103, 104. So I got tested the next day and found out I had COVID.
You were, at the time, working at St. Elizabeth's Medical Center?
That's right. I'm a urologist. I'm the chief of urology over at St. Elizabeth's Medical Center in Boston.
So you think it happened when you were meeting with patients?
Yeah, I've been trying to figure out where this came from. I don't really go out too much, so it was either from being at the hospital or going to Costco, I guess. So it's the only two places I go.
Right. Not too many other places you could have contracted it.
Yeah.
So you ended up staying in lockdown in your own home, quarantined on your side of the house, right?
Yeah, so I stayed quarantined for, it ended up being 11 days. I had a fever for a day. I took some Tylenol and it broke, and then after that I felt fine. Actually, I was in good shape. I ended up losing a fair bit of weight. I think I lost like 5 or 6 pounds during that stretch, but I felt fine. But it was just, you're just kind of cooped up in this one room for 11 days, and my family was kind enough to slide food under the door and stuff like that. So luckily, I'm extremely fortunate. Obviously, I had a really, really mild case, and obviously there are a lot of people who were suffering with this.
Well, I remember the moment you told me about it, I was obviously concerned for you and your family, but your mom lives with you.
Yeah.
And being, her age, there would be some concern, and I knew you said you were trying to get her to leave, and she wouldn't leave because she wanted to be there to help you, and she ended up being your saving grace, really.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest fear was, having it spread to my mom, and then, after that, it spread to my kids and my wife. So I was pretty nervous about that. And so I tried to gently broach the topic with my mother, she's a lovely woman, but she can be a little stubborn. And I asked her, like, hey, you want to go to my brother's place and stay there for a bit because I'm sick? And she said no. And that was the end of the discussion. She made me all these incredible meals. I didn't have like a super great appetite for a little while, but it kind of came back after a bit.
Did you have that lack of taste thing happening?
It's interesting. I never had that. What I did notice was that maybe for like a day, I felt like I smelled something kind of acrid or sour, if that makes any sense. But I didn't lose my sense of smell. I just felt like something smelled funny. So I just washed the sheets, and that didn't make it good.
What about, did you get that drowning feeling I've been hearing about, like shallow breathing?
I had really no real respiratory symptoms. After 2 days of coughing, I didn't really have any symptoms at all, actually. I got spared, so.
Your cough was dry?
Yeah, I had this really kind of dry cough. I have really mild asthma, so like maybe once every 2 or 3 years I'll get a cough, and so it's not unusual for me to have something like that, and that's what it felt like. And after a couple of days, it just went away, and it's been gone. So I didn't really have any symptoms other than that fever and the chills and that weird smell.
So on the other side of it, you went from being a patient, now you're a doctor. You're not treating coronavirus patients, but your job is kind of restricted at this point, although you're still seeing patients, you're still performing surgeries.
Right. That's right. And so I will take care of some patients who have COVID, but that's not the majority of what I'm doing. I'm still kind of doing what I normally do, just less of it. So as a urologist, I deal with diseases of the urinary tract. I see a lot of cancer patients, a lot of people with kidney cancer, prostate cancer, and stuff like that. And, bladder cancer too. We have to kind of make a judgment call about whether these surgeries need to go forward now or whether they can wait a couple of months. So that's kind of where we are right now.
Is there any protocol as far as when you meet with a patient? I know you're doing a lot of FaceTime virtual meetings, but if you're performing a surgery or something, is there a different protocol are you testing them before they get surgery to make sure they don't have COVID-19?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we are not currently, but a lot of places are. I think part of it is we're just limited by not having enough tests. If we could test everybody, we'd just test everybody.
Right.
But we don't have enough. And so right now, we're not testing everybody prior to surgery, but some places are. But I suspect once we get enough tests, that's probably where we'll be.
So how do you feel about the rapid response antibody test? I've been hearing a lot about that, how that could be really helpful, but there's a lot of limitations with it right now.
Yeah, I think last I heard, the FDA approved one of these tests, but I think it still needs to be validated. These things are not 100% just yet, and so they want to fast track a lot of these things so they can get them out to hospitals, but we need to make sure that they actually work.
I read today that they're allowing companies, I believe they were allowing the drug companies to send the tests out without FDA approval.
That may be, I know, in times like this, I wouldn't be surprised if the FDA is fast tracking a lot of these diagnostic tests. Obviously, we're in a dire situation here, so the faster these things can get to the field, the better. But the problem is we need to make sure they work, and so that does require some rigorous testing. So there's a balance.
It's crazy how the economy, the stock market reacts to this stuff. Did you see what happened with
the drug Gilead?
Yeah, Gilead. I have some Gilead stock, and the shit went crazy. But it's like there's just some like possibilities.
It's in
Nothing's
trial,
come
right?
to fruition.
Right. This is I think it's a multinational study, if I'm not mistaken. I know at the very least in the U.S. they're trying it at a number of institutions. They're using it at our institution. It's a trial, so we don't know if it's going to work or not. I mean, we have to wait for the results. Everybody's hopeful, but it sounds like something from Chicago came out, and they have to say that they were pretty hopeful about it, but we don't really have it.
Do you have any professional advice, seeing that you're a doctor with some knowledge of this? This isn't your field of expertise, but you also, were a patient or tested positive for it. So
yeah, I think the recommendations we're getting from our infectious disease specialists like Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx, that's all sound. So if people can maintain social distancing, try to minimize going out, all that stuff matters. All that stuff helps. We just need to let this stuff kind of peter out.
How do you feel about this whole herd mentality thing that they're talking about in like Sweden? They're saying that's been working, but is that working, or is it just because they don't have cases over there?
All these things are, floating around because we don't have a vaccine, right? So if we had a vaccine, then everybody would get vaccinated, and people wouldn't have to intentionally get exposed like some of these people are suggesting. The herd mentality is valid in the sense that, if you can get more than 90% of people exposed and immune to a disease, then generally sort of die out. But the problem is with a disease this lethal, that means millions and millions dying. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
I think at some point they're weighing they're putting a price on lives. At any point during the time where you had COVID, were you scared? Because this is something that nobody knows anything about. There's no studies done because we've never had COVID-19. They have no vaccine. They have no cure.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wasn't really scared, at least not for myself. I was more scared about my family, my mom and my kids and my wife, about passing it to them. And so that was what I was more concerned about. But I didn't really at any point feel scared. But, that's largely probably due to the fact that I didn't really have symptoms that were that bad. I had a slight fever. I never really felt scared, at least not for myself.
Well, enough about that shit. Let's move over to the fun stuff. Japan. Jay and I went to Japan about a year ago, and I should have done a podcast about it back then because it was a truly awakening experience I've been to different countries all over the world. I've been to Asia a few times, and this place is like no other. Jay's roots are in Asia, but they're in South Asia, not in East Asia. And Jay, you've been to Japan, 2-3 times now?
Yeah, I've been to Japan 3 times now. First time I went was in 2016, and I've been 2017, and again when we went in 2019. It's 2019, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So, of all the places I've been, this is the place I'd most consider leaving the U.S. for to live in or practice in. It's an amazing place. The physical beauty, the cultural beauty. There's a lot to like about Japan.
So some of the things that stuck out to me just on appearance was the cleanliness. The streets are immaculate, and I mean in Tokyo, in the busiest of busy neighborhoods, like New York City type neighborhoods, no litter. People eat in public. People eat on the subways. People eat on the bullet trains. People are eating and drinking and consuming things, and they're putting their stuff in the trash. Well, actually, I remember there was no trash cans in the streets.
Yeah, it's a very clean and orderly place.
Orderly was the other thing that I was thinking, yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of cultural rules that go along with being in Japan, right? And a lot of times foreigners don't understand those rules or are not familiar with those rules. So I flout them all the time and break them, and I don't even know that I'm breaking them. But if you watch people from Japan and how they behave, it's pretty amazing. They're very disciplined and routine. It sounds like a terrible cultural stereotype, but compared to the U.S., like you said, everything is clean. There's no crime. How many other big cities in the world can you walk around in and feel completely safe and not have to worry about?
Even their crime is organized.
Yeah.
Seriously, it's like the most organized crime system over there ever. And the public kind of obeys their crime.
It's all thought out, yeah.
Yeah, the Yakuza is just like on another level from the mafia.
It's incredible. And I think, I remember the first time I went to Japan, I came back and I was seeing one of my patients who's a business school professor, and he said, "How'd you like it?" And I said, "I loved it. It was amazing." And I liked how clean it was and how orderly it was. And he had been to Japan a number of times, and he said, "Yeah, I hated it." I said, "Why?" He's like, "It's so orderly, it's stifling." And it really kind of got me thinking about it, that you know, I think if you had to live there for an extended period of time, it probably could be, you know, stifling in terms of being able to express yourself.
It was one of the first times I'd been somewhere and I caught myself thinking like, oh shit, I better be careful. Like, no, normally I'm like, I don't care. Like, I can be myself. But I remember walking down the street in Tokyo with you and just like, you know, spitting. And then like, I remember you like kind of like making a couple looks after I did it maybe twice. And then I'm like, oh, I probably shouldn't be spitting in the street. Like these people, like the streets are so clean they could eat off of it. I'm spitting.
It's a unique culture, right? And I think that rigidity plays itself out in unusual ways, right? You get this unusual like counterculture that occurs, right? That develops from this kind of stifling system. So you get, do you remember this part of Japan, this part of Tokyo rather, called Harajuku, where
yes,
the people, like you know, the girls are kind of dressed up in these outrageous costumes and stuff like that, and you know, you see this kind of, you know, cultural rebellion, I guess is the only way I can put it, to break that rigidity. So, I mean, you see this stuff, and it's a little different than in other parts of the world.
they also have a certain sophistication, especially the women.
Yeah.
I just remember like every woman was just dressed to the nines, you know, not a hair out of place.
Yeah.
You know, and they love designer brands and all that. I mean, they're walking around impeccable.
It's true for both men and women. I think, especially around Tokyo, of course, you know, there's this expectation that things are a little more refined and people are dressed appropriately. And you don't see a whole lot of people breaking that norm.
To me, one of the more interesting things about Japan is the precision. I was reading about this. There was an emperor back over a century ago who basically decided to kind of go against their tradition of isolationism. He started sending Japanese citizens around the world to learn different customs and skills. And one of the skills, there was like, he would send them to Persia to learn how to make rugs. He would send them to Switzerland to learn how to make watches. He would send them to, and that's where you come in. I want to hear about your expertise with that. We have a watch connoisseur online right now. The thing that interested me was the whiskey. They went to Scotland and learned how to make scotch, and they perfected that. And then pizza. They went over to Naples and spent time with pizziolas, and they learned how to make Napolitano pizza. And we can speak on our experiences with the pizza. We're going to get to that when we talk food, but don't sleep on Japanese pizza.
Yeah, it sounds like a joke, right? But it's true. You're absolutely right. Like they, you know, sometimes people will say if the Japanese didn't invent it, they perfected it, you know? So they'll take these ideas and then, like you said, execute them with ultimate precision and really come out with this incredible product. As far as watches go, I mean, they have several big brands. There's Seiko and Citizen, and the watches, some of the finest watches that these guys make are comparable to anything made in Switzerland or Germany or anywhere else in the world. It's incredible what they can do. All this beautiful handmade finishing, you know, it's really pretty amazing.
What are they doing mechanically that they're not doing in, like, just like a watch in, like a regular watch in Switzerland? Like, what do they do that's different?
In terms of mechanics, it's actually interesting. You know, Seiko developed their own movement. You know, the movement's kind of the beating art of the watch, of a mechanical watch. And for the past couple hundred years, most mechanical watches use this one particular type of movement called the lever escapement. But Seiko has always prided themselves on being innovative, and so they've come up with a couple of new escapements that have actually revolutionized the way watches are made. The first was quartz. So, you know, most people's watches run on a battery and or they have like a digital display or something like that. That's a quartz watch. Seiko invented that. They came out with that in 1969. They have other really amazing innovations like the spring drive movement, which is something a little newer. But these are things that are incredibly accurate, incredibly well done. And what I think they do, aside from innovation, is their finishing. So the way they decorate these movements is as good as anything coming out of Europe.
Yeah, that stuff. We went to some watch stores over there, and the little bit I learned about watches, because I don't know anything about watches, I found it really interesting. So I wanted Jay to give us a little tutorial on that.
I hope I don't get in trouble for this. The first time I went to Japan was actually, it was for a meeting in Japan, but I managed to time the meeting perfectly so I could get this watch from Tokyo. It was only available in Tokyo, so
On like a certain date or whatever it was coming out.
Yeah, it was only available. So there weren't any available in the U.S. They had like each big city store had like 10, and they were all spoken for. But I called the store in Tokyo, and they're like, "Yeah, we got a couple hundred," and I was like, "All right."
What kind of watch was it? A Seiko or?
It was a Seiko, yeah. Yeah, it was a limited edition Seiko. The whole purpose of the the trip was to actually get this watch, but I did learn a lot at the meeting and contribute to that meeting too. So it was professionally very important as well.
They did some other amazing things, like their subways. Their subways are so precise. They're the most on-time trains like in the world.
Yeah.
They never miss. Like they're never late. They're just on point with that. However they managed to do that. They also, on the same idea as watches, rifles. They innovated rifles for like World War II. They basically made the sniper rifle popular, and that was important fighting in the jungles.
Yeah.
Because in Europe the warfare was different. You could just shoot a machine gun and let it spray, and it would hit whoever it hit, and it would do enough damage. But when you're shooting in the jungles, you weren't hitting anything. You were hitting trees and hills and mountains, you know. And they said that they needed a sniper rifle with they needed accuracy. And the Japanese people perfected the accuracy on a rifle.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then with the whiskey, they took whiskey, and I like what they did. They started putting whiskey in different barrels. So they were putting it in not only bourbon barrels, rum barrels, red wine barrels, and their own Japanese oak barrels. And then they were taking the different barrels and mixing it and blending whiskey. So they weren't just doing like single malts or a single barrel. They were blending the different barrels, and that's how they were getting more diverse flavor than Scotland was putting out.
I'm not a Scotch or whiskey expert, but I gotta say I really do like Japanese whiskey. I think it's some of the best I've ever had.
Yeah, I drank almost a whole bottle last Saturday night with you guys when we had that Zoom conference call with Hendu and the Big Vilboski. Happy birthday, Big Vilboski.
Happy birthday, Vilboski.
I know he's going to hear this. But yeah, I drank too much Japanese whiskey last Saturday night, and I've been on punishment all week because of it.
I'll put a curl in your horns.
Yeah, that's for sure. So let's talk about Sushi Dai. The sushi market, that is an amazing, once-in-a-lifetime type experience that you only get if you go to Japan. You can eat sushi at Nobu and go to all these fancy sushi places in any city in the world, but unless you go to Tokyo and eat at its Toyosu Market now, it used to be Tsukiji Market, yes. It's now Toyosu Market. You have to we get up at what, 3 a.m.?
Yeah, you got to get in line pretty early.
We got up at like 3 a.m. We set the alarms in the hotel room on our first night in Tokyo, and you go over to this market, and at the market, it's huge. It's a huge market. We had to find the restaurant area because the market is mostly, from what I understand, we didn't see a lot of it, but it's fish coming in, right, from the docks and being sold out to it's being shipped all over the world, some of it.
That's right. That's right. So if you want to get a bite to eat at one of these pretty famous sushi places in the market there, you got to get up pretty early. The line starts early. I think they open at 5, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think we got in the door at 5.
You see a lot of tourists there, but what's amazing is you see a lot of people from Tokyo and other parts of Japan there. So it's not like it's just these aren't tourist traps, right? These are people. This is like where people would kind of go to have a nice meal. They just happen to do it at 5 in the morning.
Yeah, I felt like it was half people that lived in the area, maybe not like in Tokyo, but they were coming from, the outskirts of Tokyo, and this is like a special thing they do once a month or something. Right. And then it was, foreigners and whatnot. But We had to get there an hour and a half advance. We were the second people in line, if I remember correctly. And it was cold as hell out. This was in February. And we waited for an hour and a half in line. And so we got in, and it's what, like they let 10 people in at a time or something, or 12 people.
Yeah.
And you just get an amazing omakase experience of, 12 or 15 cuts of fish. A meal like that in the U.S., depending on where you go, is going to run you $100, $200, $300, and it was $35. And they close out the meal, and I think this is a great touch. They ask you what was your favorite piece, and you get to pick one of the 15 pieces that you had.
It's amazing. This is the best meal I've ever had anywhere. Not just the best sushi, but for me, whenever people ask me where I like to eat or what's my favorite meal, that's it. The rice is a perfect temperature. The fish is so fresh and it's not cold. Everything is just right. There's a nice pace to the meal too, right? So, you're eating, there's not a whole lot of time for dilly-dallying or anything like that. You're just kind of in and out, but man, it's the most flavorful fish I've ever
It's the right amount of food too.
Yep.
Amazing. We had another similar experience to that. That was Sushi Dai. We went over to, I believe it was the next evening at Ginza Sushiko. And that was a Bourdain restaurant. I had seen Bourdain go there with Masa. Masa is the chef at literally the most expensive restaurant in the United States. It's called Masa. It's a sushi place in Columbus Circle in Manhattan. And I saw him and Bourdain have a meal at this place. And this is where Masa learned how to become a sushi chef. So I had to try this place. And it was similar to Sushi Dai. I would say it was better in some areas and not as good in some areas. The experience wasn't as crazy as that one because we went there at like 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. like a normal dinner time. But we did pay something like $200 or $250 each for that meal. So it was a completely different, $35 at the market is just, I can't even tell you how ridiculous that price is for the stuff we were eating.
What you get at the market too, I don't know if they still have this at the new market, but at the old Tsukiji market, you could see the fish auction, right? So you would go and you could have a nice meal, and you could also go watch them, auction off these fish. So for the folks who've seen Jiro Dreams of Sushi, it's that auction that they have there. It's incredible. The first time I went to Tokyo, I saw it. It was pretty amazing. They start out with a chant, and then they just start, auctioning off these incredible fish. I didn't realize that fish get that large, so it was pretty interesting.
And never mind trying to get into Hiro. Is it Hiro or Jiro?
I think it's Jiro. I'm not sure if he's Hispanic or not. I think it's Jiro.
Jiro Dreams of Sushi is one of the first successful Netflix documentaries, and it was, that guy's restaurant you can't get into. We tried to get a reservation there. It's impossible. A lot of the restaurants in Japan give you a warning if you're headed out there. They don't even let people that live outside of Tokyo into them. It's like an exclusive experience. You have to know the chef, or you have to be a regular at that restaurant, and they won't let you in there.
One thing you can do is, if you know where you're going to be staying a couple months in advance, you can ask them to make reservations on your behalf. I've tried that, and I still haven't been able to get into those places.
Yeah, there's different levels. There's restaurants that will take reservations from like certain hotels. Like if you stay at a good hotel, or they have a concierge that has some connects, they'll take reservations from them. And some places will not take anything except, Yeah. So we still did fine.
We did well. Another really memorable meal I had the first time I went to Tokyo.
Yeah, bring it on.
It's this place called Tapas. It's at the top of the Mandarin Oriental in Tokyo, and I want to say that's where they filmed Lost in Translation, right?
Yes, that's what I was going to say with Bill Murray.
Yeah. And,
Suntory Toku.
I love that movie. But there's this incredible molecular gastronomy place at the top of the Mandarin Oriental called Tapas. And one of the most incredible experiences, just food experiences I've ever had.
Is that French?
It has French influence, but it's still Japanese.
Okay.
They have influences from all over. So they'll bring out this like beaker of some brown liquid, and then like have some stuff dripping into it, and it turns into a gelatin or something. It's like these incredible visual and like aesthetic experiences.
The Japanese alinea.
Yeah, exactly. It's like alinea, but I'd even say it's even surpassed.
Probably, yeah.
Great.
That's another thing they did. They perfected like fine dining.
Yeah.
They went over to France. Their chefs studied over there, and then they came back, and there's tons of fine French dining restaurants in Japan.
It's really true. Some of the best French restaurants in the world are in Tokyo, and best molecular gastronomy places. I want to say it's Michelin 1 or 2 star rated.
Let's talk pizza. I was watching this show on Netflix called Ugly Delicious. It's a David Chang show. David Chang goes all over the world and eats different things. He has a taco episode. He has a pizza episode. He's got a steak episode. So the particular episode was a pizza episode. He goes, he's doing New York pizza. He goes to Naples. He's eating Naples pizza. He's eating at Lucali in Brooklyn. He goes to Tokyo, and he's eating at Savoy Pizza in Tokyo. And he says, this is the best pizza I've ever had. I'm going to take you to Savoy in Tokyo. And I'm thinking, what is this guy talking about? He's going to Japan, and he's going to eat the best pizza he's ever had. This is stupid. So after seeing it, of course, it looks good on TV, but I don't believe the guy. I take Jay there. We go there I think it was like after a day of running around the city all day. And we got there at maybe 4 or 5 p.m. and they were sold out. They said no more dough. They closed the door. And this is a place that usually stays open for lunch and dinner. And they were sold out by 5 p.m. So that's a good sign. So we're like, we need to come back to this place. So the next day, we go back. We said, what time do you open? They said, come back when we open tomorrow. It was like, 10 a.m. or 11 a.m.? We go back. We were the first ones in line. We get in. We order a couple pizzas. We didn't say too much other than, this is amazing. And then we ordered another pizza. And it was literally the best pizza I've ever had in my life.
Best pizza I ever had. I was initially skeptical. I was like, how good could pizza be? And pizza in Tokyo, don't really know what to expect. But man, that was the best pizza I've ever had. And I probably could have eaten another whole pizza myself. That was incredible.
I would say the thing that set it apart for me was the dough had like a certain flavor to it. It had like they like put a little bit of salt on the crust, and I literally mean like a little salt bay, like a little drop.
Yeah. And
that made all the difference in the world. Not to mention the texture of it, and everything else was perfect. I highly recommend it. What other meals stood out to you? I have a couple in mind that were different. We did the sushi, we did the pizza.
That last one we had together was amazing. Where I wish I could remember the name of the restaurant.
The wagyu, all the different meat cuts.
Yeah, that place is incredible.
It's tough to pronounce. I think it's Sumi Biyaki no Nakahara. It was like we had wagyu tongue 3 ways.
Yeah.
I mean, just different ridiculous cuts of Kobe beef, wagyu, A5 wagyu, all that stuff. They put the little grill in front of you. They cook it in your face. Amazing. And so different. We're eating cooked meat instead of eating raw fish. So it was a completely different experience.
Yeah. I mean, the meat was so tender. It was so fatty. It was delicious. Every cut was just amazing.
Crazy marbling.
Yeah. It was unbelievable. That was a memorable meal for sure. Actually, you know what I remember? Some of the more memorable meals for me were some of the ramen meals that we had. Just little small hole-in-the-wall kinds of places. You go around and find these places that have this unbelievable bowl of noodles.
Do you have any luck ordering?
What's that?
Remember when we were trying to order them? You have to do it like the vending machine?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's kind of unique in Japan. A lot of these places you order. It's like you're at a vending machine getting a Coke or something like that.
It looked like a scratch ticket machine.
Yeah, that's exactly what it looks like. You put your money in and you get a ticket at the end, and then you go grab your seat, and then they bring you the ramen. It's a unique thing there, and but man, the food definitely some holes in the wall just walking around Ginza.
Mugataribu. That was the first one we went to. And then the more that was different. It had a triple broth with like clam, chicken, and like 3 different types of broth. And then we went to in Kyoto. We went to the more traditional place, Ippudo, which I've been to in New York. It's a big ramen brand, and we had the spicy pork ramen, which to me that's my go-to anywhere.
It's just it's a unique experience, right? That you can't replicate here in the U.S. So that was pretty cool.
In at ramen places, they want you. There were signs I remember, like they want you to get in and get out, eat your food and get out, because we need to put more butts in these chairs.
Not much small talk, like you said.
Nope. I got one you might have forgot. What about those oysters?
Oh yeah, that was a fun night.
We ate some big ass Japanese oysters.
I forgot about that night. I forgot about those oysters. That was a fun night.
Yeah,
and
those
oysters were incredible. Yeah, I mean they had oysters from New England too. They had oysters from the Pacific Northwest. They had oysters from New England, and the oysters from around Hokkaido were unbelievable.
Yeah, we were there at the right time. You know, we were getting some cold water oysters. They were significantly bigger than New England oysters.
They were.
Ostraya Roppongi. It was in Roppongi.
Yeah.
And then we also hit that izakaya, the Kill Bill joint.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like they filmed Kill Bill there.
That was a good place.
Gompachi.
Yeah.
Yep.
We banged the gong up at the time.
I believe you banged the gong.
I can't remember exactly who did it, but one of us may have banged the gong.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's Kyoto. We can touch on Kyoto real quick. Kyoto's very different than Tokyo. It's more of that traditional rustic, not as big city, not like that. You're getting temples, Shinto temples all over the place. We went and checked out a couple of them. Golden Gai, Fushimi Inari. Yeah, that was cool. It looked like Herd Stadium up there.
All the orange, yeah.
Yeah, the orange and black and all that.
You know, Kyoto is the old capital. It's smaller. It is, I don't know, I guess it has more of a cultural feel to it in some ways. You know, it's because it's not as busy. More of an emphasis on seeing these Shinto temples there.
It's not as technologically advanced, and it's not as...
It's not like walking around Ginza where everybody's dressed in Chanel or whatever.
If Tokyo's New York, Kyoto is...
maybe Boston.
Yeah, I mean, something like that. Those my highlight of that was the markets. Walking through those markets. I believe we can call those wet markets.
That's probably accurate.
I've been hearing a lot of wet market talk now about China.
Those markets were incredible. We had some incredible snacks there when we were walking around.
Yeah, the ones that stand out to me, I remember the octopus on a stick.
That's what I remember too. That was.
I think they had like an egg yolk inside of them.
Yeah, they did. I had to suppress a lot of urges to kind of eat that thing, but it was worth it. It was good.
Hell yeah. It was good. Just some sea urchin straight out the shell.
Yeah, that was incredible.
And then, of course, a dessert of cod roe soft serve.
That's right.
Who doesn't eat cod roe soft serve?
Everybody's favorite.
Yeah, fish egg ice cream.
Everybody's favorite.
One thing that just popped into my mind, we got interviewed by a local TV station in Tokyo. They were like, look at these two momos walking around from somewhere in the West. Where are you guys from? And we're like, the U.S. What did they even ask us?
I thought these guys were on a scavenger hunt. I wasn't quite sure what these guys were up to at first. They were asking us these questions. And
what was that, Ginza? It's like Times Square or whatever.
But yeah, so in Ginza, that's right, a film crew, I don't want to say accosted you, Matt, but they were very curious to hear what you had to say.
They were very curious. Tokyo TV. Tune in Tokyo. Something you were a big fan of is the bullet trains. You like the trains?
Yeah, I'm like a 5-year-old. I could ride around the bullet trains all day long. That was an incredible experience for me. I can't wait to take my kids on that.
Because we did the bullet train from Tokyo to Kyoto.
The bullet trains are amazing. You know, the ones in Japan go up to, like, I want to say 250 miles an hour, maybe, something like that. There are faster ones in the world, I think, in China, but the ones in Japan are amazing, and I think they're going to build one that's going to be even faster than the ones in China. So pretty soon they're going to have the fastest bullet trains.
Yeah, the ones in Japan actually stay on the tracks, though. That's the difference.
I mean, it's amazing to go from Tokyo to Kyoto in what, it took us like an hour.
Yeah, and wasn't it like Boston to DC or something, or
yeah, something like that.
Makes me wonder what Suwako's up to. But I remember on the bullet train, you bought one of those bento boxes at the train station.
Yes.
You were eating a little lunch bento box, and I was eating zebra cakes. Those zebra cakes were good.
You know, the quality of the food, even from like a small stand or a convenience store, like, you know, everything is made at such a high level with high quality.
And when you talk quality, how can you not talk about Zima? We were on our way to jump on the subway and head out somewhere one day. We stopped at the convenience store for a snack, and we saw Zima in the refrigerator. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who don't remember Zima, but it was pretty much, it was ahead of its time. It was like the grandfather to the White Claw or the Truly, a sparkling alcoholic beverage that doesn't taste much like alcohol. It's pretty much what the girls were drinking in high school, and if the guys drank it, they were considered soft. But anyway, it only lasted a couple years. This was in the 90s, and then it just disappeared until we saw it in Japan. So we looked it up online, and it's only sold in Japan. I don't know how they got a monopoly on it, but you can't find Zima anywhere in the world but Japan. So if you're not into sushi and you're not into Wagyu beef and Japanese whiskey, stuff like that, at least make a trip to Japan for the Zima. Didn't you say, and I think I heard this before, some of the best ramen joints are in the train stations, like in the basements, really? Some
of the best places I've been to, there's one in the Kyoto train station. There's another one in the Tokyo main train station. It's a huge, sprawling complex, and it's like this maze. I don't know if you remember walking around there.
Yeah, I remember all the free samples we were getting in there. Yeah. Crushing samples.
That's right. Some of the best ramen I've had has been in those train stations, though. It's weird to say, but one of the best waffle breakfasts I've ever had has been in one of those train stations.
Nice.
I was leaving Tokyo, and I was like, I had sushi every single day, and I was ready to just have something else. And I found this place in the main train station in Tokyo, and, you know, it just looked like a regular diner. I thought I'd just grab a quick bite to eat. Most incredible waffles I've ever had. Waffles with, you know, all this fruit and stuff piled on top. It's like this nice inner, like, custard or something in it. It's like soft and delicious. Man, it was incredible.
Jesus, Jai Bahr, this isn't an X-rated podcast.
Whoa.
Take it easy. The last time I went to a waffle restaurant, I was at a Waffle House at about 3 in the morning in Atlanta. I bet the crowd was very similar to the waffle place in Tokyo.
I think this was a Waffle House.
Have you ever eaten at a Waffle House?
Yeah, actually. When I was thinking about doing my fellowship in St. Louis, I went out to St. Louis for a couple of days to try to, you know, scope out the scene, maybe find an apartment. And there's a Waffle House pretty close to the airport, at least next to the train station that takes you from the airport. And I didn't know where the hell I was or what I was doing, but I heard about Waffle Houses from some of my favorite artists.
Like who? Outkast?
From Outkast and probably a classic group that not many people remember, Another Level.
I was going to say Another Level.
But anyway, so I had some chicken and waffles at the Waffle House, and I knew I was home.
Speaking of St. Louis, we had some good times in St. Louis.
We had a great time, man. We went to go see NCAA first 2 rounds, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe like 2012 or something?
Yeah.
We caught Kansas, Andrew Wiggins, and play against Wichita State.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I think we might have seen Kansas, Kentucky. No, Kentucky played before them. They had Fred VanVleet.
Yep.
Just a good time going over there. Jai Bahr, tell them what you were doing in St. Louis. That was interesting work you were doing there.
So after residency, you know, you're a fully trained surgeon, so you could go practice somewhere. But if you want, you can do some additional specialty training. So I spent a year in St. Louis focusing on a kind of a niche area. So it's urologic trauma and reconstruction. So it's like, you know, gunshots, stab wounds, car accidents, pelvic fractures, and things like that, you know, impact the urinary tract. And a lot of reconstructive urology for people who have like scar tissue in their urethras and ureters, making new bladders out of different organs, like small intestine, large intestine. If I have to take out a bladder for cancer, I'll make a new one out of a piece of intestine.
Give us like a small breakdown of how, like, that sounds so ridiculous to a normal person. Like, you make a bladder out of something. Like, that's crazy.
You know, the interesting thing is that these techniques have been around for a long, long time. A lot of these techniques have been around for, 4, 5, 6 decades, some of them. And the ideas are old ones, but not all. I'd say probably not too many people still know how to do it or do it comfortably. So, like if you have to take out your bladder for cancer or for some other reason, if it's just not working, then you can make a new bladder out of a piece of intestine. I just kind of like fashion it into a spherical shape and hook one end up to the ureters. Those are the little tubes that carry, urine from your kidneys on down. And, sometimes I'll hook the other end up to the urethra, in which case you could just urinate like you normally would. Or sometimes what I'll do is hook the other end up to your belly button, and you can catheterize yourself through your belly button. And so that's a nice option for some people.
What about, can you use synthetic parts?
Yeah, it's interesting. People have been trying to use engineered organs for a long time. It's been hit or miss. The track record is a little spotty, I'd say. There was some promise in the 2000s, kind of late 2000s, early 2000 teens, that we could use these off-the-shelf engineered bladders. They were using it particularly in children who had different congenital diseases. It turned out to not be such a great option. A lot of them failed, and so they kind of haven't been used quite as often.
When you transform an intestine into a bladder, are you doing this all in one procedure? You go in, you take a piece of the intestine, and how long does it take to take a piece of intestine and turn it into a bladder?
Yeah, it probably takes about 2 or 3 hours to make one of these. It seems like it's really complex, but in the end, it's actually not super complex. You're just taking a tube, a piece of intestine, which is a tube, and you kind of cut along one side of it, and you fold it up and turn it into a sphere, and then you sew the ureters in. There's really not too much to it.
Crazy stuff. Man, this has been a great time catching up with you. I wish we could have done this in person with all this craziness going on.
Yeah, pretty soon we'll be able to catch in person and do this again, but this is fantastic. Thanks for having me on, Maddie.
I don't know if I told you the last couple hours before we jumped on this thing, every night at 8 o'clock, they have like this big balcony party going on here for like the coronavirus stuff. I live in a Jay knows, but for the audience, I live in like a high rise in downtown Miami, and there's several tall buildings in my neighborhood, and everybody goes out on the balcony every night at 8 o'clock during this lockdown, and there's DJs playing music, makeshift DJs. There's people banging pots and pans. There's foghorns. There's whistles. There's people screaming. They do this every night at 8 o'clock. And sometimes it lasts about 2 minutes. Sometimes it lasts 20 minutes. Sometimes it goes 2 hours. You never know. Tonight, they had some world-famous international DJ, David Guetta, performing a show at the hotel across the street. And the whole neighborhood was going bonkers. And the police had to shut it down, at least in the street, because all the people were stopping and gathering, and that's the one thing they don't want is people gathering. So it's been interesting over here. There's always a lot of activity, which is one of the good things about living here, and one of the bad things is it's tough to go out and find fresh air with nobody around because I live in the city. I don't have a field or a park where I can just go run. Got to run in the street.
Can't wait for Brickell to open back up.
But the one thing that you and I have been discussing today, and we are highly anticipating, is the Michael Jordan documentary, The Last Dance.
Man, I can't wait for this. I feel like I lived it, but, I don't think I really fully appreciated how amazing everything was when I was a kid, when, we were watching in real time.
It's tough to appreciate, like the Celtics stuff that we grew up with in the 80s. Like, it was tough. We just thought the Celtics make it to the finals every year. That's what they do. And then exactly. Until they don't. And same thing with Jordan. It's like, oh yeah, he's the best player in the league. He's the best. And then you never see anything ever like him again. And the interesting thing for me, the thing that's, of course I want to see this, and I cannot wait to see this. But for the younger generation to see him, you and I exchanged a couple articles that we were reading about it. Some of the statistical stuff that Jordan, he was like the first guard to win MVP. They had never had a shooting guard win MVP.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was like 14 of the previous 16 league MVPs were centers or something like that, and then Jordan came along and just blew everybody out of the water.
Yeah, Bird and Magic got a couple mixed in there, but neither of them were shooting guards. You know, he's a forward and a point guard. Yeah. Jordan redefined like how to play. Like he redefined the game. Like nobody was doing what he was doing, and he was
redefined himself, right? I mean, he changed from an acrobatic dude who's gonna drive past you and dunk in your face to a guy who's hitting fadeaway jumpers over you just can't stop. Like,
well, he redefined himself a couple times. He went from acrobatic dude that could occasionally knock down jumpers if you left him open to, okay, I can make open jumpers now, to, okay, I'm not as athletic anymore, so I need to bulk up and go in the post and knock down deep fadeaways all day. I mean... Yeah. The shots he was taking are discouraged, highly discouraged these days.
For somebody who's not a center to do that is pretty amazing.
Right. And some of the other cool stuff we found was that article about his reasons for agreeing to do the documentary. So there were 3 key components to this. One of them was Adam Silver, the current commissioner. He was the head of the NBA media department back in the 90s, and he had a great idea to follow Jordan on his final season because he said this footage will be unbelievable someday. And Jordan agreed to it, but he only agreed to it if Jordan had control of the footage. You cannot do anything with this footage. It needs to be locked away unless I agree to do something with it. So it's been sitting in a vault at the NBA offices in Secaucus, New Jersey. Silver got lucky that he had that great idea and Jordan finally agreed to do it. And now the 2 reasons Jordan agreed to do it, do you remember the first one?
So, I think it was LeBron and the championship in 2016. They speculated that I think he said yes to this on the same day that they were celebrating the championship, right?
Correct. On the day that LeBron finally won one for Cleveland, MJ says, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah.
So he meets with the team that's making the doc, and he says, let me see your resume. And they show him a list of documentaries they've worked on, to movies they've made. They made a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar doc. They made a Hank Aaron doc. They made Varsity Blues, the movie, with I Don't Want Your Life. Dawson, baby. Yeah, what's his name? Vanderbeek. Yeah. And then he sees down the bottom the Iverson documentary that was on ESPN. And he looks at him and he says, you made this? And the guy was concerned that he was like, oh, is this good or bad? He seems like really focused on this AI doc. And he says, yeah. And Jordan says, I love that little dude. I watched it 3 times. It made me cry. So, done deal.
There's something in that article that I thought was a bit of a stretch. And we touched upon it briefly. But, you know, they said AI behind LeBron and MJ had the biggest impact on culture as far as NBA players go. I thought that was an interesting thing. I mean, I love AI, and I've loved him since he came into the league, and even before when he was at Georgetown. But I thought that was a bit of a stretch. I guess the more that I think about it, I guess that's true. I felt like he didn't like bring swagger into the league, right? I mean, he didn't bring baggy jeans into the league and stuff like that. But you know, he kind of like took it and popularized it and spread it throughout the world, I guess. I guess that's what
he's like. It's almost like he was Japan. He's not the first person to get tattoos and get braid his hair and the big diamond earrings and wearing jerseys and shit. But he's the one who made it popular.
I mean, you imagine somebody like, I don't know, Wilt Chamberlain or Dr. J or somebody has a big cultural impact too. But you're right. I mean, it's probably, you know, Allen Iverson's impact is probably even bigger.
Yeah. Cannot wait to see this thing, and I can't wait for... I heard there's some great Bird stuff in there.
I can't wait to see the Bird stuff, man. I read a few of the quotes, and, you know, it's Bird being laudatory, and...
It's probably going to be the highest-rated documentary of all time, considering the circumstances. It's a perfect storm. Yeah. All right, brother, I think that's it.
All right, man.
Yo, where are we going next? We were talking Ethiopia. We were talking Africa somewhere. Where are we going to go?
Okay. Let me ask you one question. Would you ever want to do something like climb Mount Kilimanjaro or something like that?
Yeah. What is that?
I've had this.
How serious is that?
Not super serious yet. But, oh, you mean like how serious am I about it, or how hard is it to do?
How hard is it to do? What level of hiking is this?
I think it's not just like a walk in the park kind of thing. I think you got to train and prepare and that kind of shit. I don't know if like my knees are gonna be able to handle it. I think I probably can, but I was gonna do a little digging to see if this is something that's possible.
Yeah.
I mean, you feel like your knees and everything could.
I mean, I think so. I think it would depend how much like equipment we have to carry. I know it's in a warmer place than some of those mountains, so you don't have to worry too much about the cold. But once you get higher, it's probably pretty cold, right?
It's gonna be something I've always wanted to do, and maybe it's not such a smart idea, but let me do a little digging and figure out.
What do you know about Mount Fuji in Japan? It's like not even comparable to that, right? Like that's super easy compared to.
I climbed a fair bit of Mount Fuji, not all of it. I didn't get to the top, but
I mean, if we do Kilimanjaro, are you like camping out like for a night or two, like, or how's it work? Do you know?
I think that's what you got to do. It's like a multiple day thing. You like probably got to block out a week, and you have to train and get all the right equipment, carry your tent and all that crap. So
we could probably get advice from Jimbo and Folsey. They did the Appalachian Trail several times.
We did the Appalachian Trail, and Jimbo rode out to an island in a boat with a hole in it. So
yeah, who was he with?
I don't remember. Dudes was blacked out. Take your best story. Take your best stories. Take your best story. Put them all together. Make a movie called Blacked Out. I swear I'm gonna go up to the dude's office, put a gun down on the table, say, "Listen, you make this movie. You don't make this movie. You shoot me in the head right now, because I'd rather be dead."
Oh my God, that's great. All right.
All right, brother.
That's Hey, no, I'm signing off on Keeping It a Hundo right now. Me and you are gonna finish this conversation. Jai Bahr, say bye to your guests. I mean your listeners.
Hey, Matty B, thanks for having me on, man. This was a lot of fun. It's always nice to catch up, and we'll be catching up face to face soon.
No doubt. As you can see, Jai Bahr has recovered nicely from his coronavirus experience, and he's back at work making bladders out of grocery bags and thermoses. With Mother's Day coming up, I'd like to give a special thank you to all the mothers who listen to Keeping It a Hundo, including my own. Happy Mother's Day, Mom. Happy Mother's Day to Mrs. Eswara, who took great care of Jay when he was sick, and she was always great to me. And a special thank you to all the nurses and medical workers, doctors like Jai Bahr. My mom was a nurse for like half a century, so special thank you to all them. They're risking their own health to help those who have been dealing with COVID-19 and the coronavirus. And stay healthy during this pandemic. If you need any at-home workouts, get in touch with me. Hundo Health and Fitness has you taken care of. And if you're not a better cook by now, just from being home and having to figure stuff out on your own, then shame on you. It's been cool to see some of my friends that don't typically cook. They're enjoying the whole process, and they discovered that they can take care of themselves in the kitchen. And before I go, I'll leave you with a few recommendations, maybe some TV, movies, books, whatever. The Warmth of Other Suns was one of the best books I ever read. It was about the Great Migration. Why certain families ended up where they did. I've referenced it on the program several times. Amazing book about American history and personal stories about people who migrated from the South into the big cities in the North and the West. It's by Isabel Wilkerson. TV, Little Fires Everywhere. Just finished that last night. It's on Hulu. That's one of the best shows I've seen. But The Hidden Gem is a show on Amazon called 000. And it's an Italian director who I've enjoyed his stuff before. It's a show about drug trafficking between Mexico, the U.S., and Italy. The show takes place in all these remote locations, including those places, and Morocco and Senegal. It's a great show, 000. And if you haven't seen Parasite, the Oscar-winning best movie of the year, check that out. Great flick. And you definitely can't go wrong with the Tarantino Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. All right, everybody, stay safe during these strange times and try to be productive. I'll try to get some more pods out to you in the next few weeks, hopefully. I have a few people in mind. It's just a matter of coordinating and getting it done over FaceTime or Zoom or House Party or however we do this. Thanks for listening to Keepin' It a Hundo.